The U.S. Treasury long-term rates going to go up. Why? Because they're going to need money to finance this deficit. And there's going to be a risk of elevated inflation from tariffs and decrease in investor demand with rating downgrades from fiscal deficit, decreasing demand for long-term treasuries. That's what's going to be happening. These are the same concerns for Senator Ron Johnson, who's a Republican, but he was a businessman. I talked to him when he first got in. This is what he was upset about. And he was originally against the bill. He switched his vote from a no to a yes over the weekend after speaking directly with the president. I wanted to find out why. He joins me now. Senator, you and I have talked about this before. You remember a million years ago when I said, come up from D.C., I'll give you the whiteboard, and you can show people how what you see with our government and how it spends is so screwed up. Now, how are they to interpret your switch on this bill?
Well, first of all, we do have a spending problem. You seem pretty frustrated. I say nobody can out-frustrate me. We have a spending problem. We went from $4.4 trillion to over $7 trillion over the last 6 years, increased spending more than $2 trillion in 1 year. And, the Unit Party does that. And so I'm highly frustrated about it. The root cause, again, I think you're misdiagnosing an awful lot. You're pointing a lot of problems. You're certainly not trying to reduce anger in your opening there. But the root cause of the problem is literally the size of government. The essential ingredient to America is freedom. It's what we use to dream and aspire and build and create this marvel that is a marvel in the span of human history. It's freedom. Less than 100 years ago, the federal government was 3.5% of our economy. State and local governments were 9.1%. That was the foundational premise of this nation. Government close to the governed, where it's more efficient, more effective, more accountable. Now the federal government's approaching 24%. We've had the last 4 years deficits of $1.9 trillion. No matter how much you try and punish success, and I've actually got this, one of my better charts here. I'll put it up. You can't really see it all that well. But what it shows is when we try and punish success, top marginal tax rate is 70 or 91%, 70%, as low as 28%. The green bar there shows, on average, we collect about 17.1% of our GDP in revenue. That's where we are today. And Democrats, when they had 4 years, they could have repealed the Tax Cut and Job Act. They didn't do it. We're not cutting taxes for, the main part of this bill is we're just not increasing taxes by $4 trillion, which would be devastating for our economy, and everybody would suffer. So we just don't want to increase taxes. Now, personally, I wouldn't cut any more taxes, but the president ran on it. Cutting taxes is easy. Spending money is easy. That's our problem. So those of us who are trying to dial it back, I wrote a column in the Wall Street Journal January 1st, laid out 3 very reasonable pre-pandemic levels of spending. Went back to Clinton in 1998, Obama in 2014, Trump 2019. If you take those actual outlays, by the way, exempt Social Security, Medicare, and interest, but all the other outlays, grow them by population growth, inflation, you'd have a baseline budget somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 trillion. That's $1.5 trillion less to 800, half $1 trillion less. So that's a big delta. Mm-hmm. We're not even coming close in the one big beautiful bill. So my problem is I've got to vote, and it is true. I take the tax increase off the table, and that's the biggest part of the score, about $4 trillion. If you take that off the table, because nobody wants to increase taxes, Democrats didn't, we don't want to. I think it's very ill-advised. We actually are getting some spending reductions, historic levels, $1.5 trillion over 10 years. The problem is we increased spending over $2 trillion in 1 year. So it's just not meeting the moment. But at some point in time, when the bill's before you, you've got to decide it's better than doing nothing. Because if we don't do this, America's going to get a $4 trillion tax increase. We need, by the way, more money for the border because the Democrats and Biden open it up. We've got to clean up that mess. All the wars. Got to plus up defense spending. We've got to clean up that mess. And of course, the $1.9 trillion average deficits, 7 years, for 7 years before the pandemic, average deficits were $660 billion. Still way too high. Now, a rational president and Democrats in Congress would have said, okay, COVID years an aberration. Let's reduce spending and deficits back to that pre-pandemic level. That's not what happened. So now $1.9 trillion is kind of the new normal. And those of us who are trying to reduce it, get accused, let me finish, get accused of trying to cut social or Medicaid.
Let you finish. I've let you talk for 10 minutes.
I realize
I'm not letting you finish, Ron. Who's giving you this much time? Go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. So we get accused of trying to cut Medicaid for disabled children. Nothing could be further from the truth. Obamacare addition to Medicaid is the most damaging thing to Medicaid. For every dollar that we put into traditional Medicaid for a disabled child, the federal government puts in $1.33. For every dollar the states put into Medicaid expansion for single adults who should be working, we put in $9. That has led to billions of dollars flowing away from the federal government into state coffers, into provider coffers. Urban hospitals are rolling in the dough. We have a problem with rural hospitals, but you can fix that for about $6 to $10 billion. Why are we spending hundreds of billions? Again, this has been a big scam. We're trying to fix it, but in trying to fix it, we get accused falsely of trying to take Medicaid away from disabled children. So again, it's easy to be a Democrat. It's easy to be a big spender.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.